Hey there guys, and welcome to a champion concept. Now I've been talking about doing these on the channel for a little while now, and I'm finally doing one because I finally finished one. Now I've got a number of champion concepts finished on my computer. Let's see now, documents, champion concepts. I've got a number finished. However, I wanted to start this series off with a completely new one, and we'll talk about those other guys at some point. But for now, I wanted to start with a completely new character. Han, the Archon. That's the art of him. I have this. Well, it's just that exact same drawing. I don't feel like finding it. So, he uses these two little sickles to fight. Now, they are actually connected by chains, which I didn't draw. And then he also has this sort of like a staff on his back. And he draws that staff with his ultimate, and that staff gives... he sends through it his energy of, well, I'll have to show you guys the champion Go away, Java update. I'll have to show you guys the Go away, CCleaner. I'll have to show you guys the champion concept stuff first. But basically he uses both darkness and light to fight. And he's very interesting in that he has them integrated in what's sort of like a three-way shift. Plus he's got his ultimate, which could probably be considered in and of itself a different form, even if it doesn't functionally change his abilities at all. So, his passive. Hands of Darkness and Light. He has two affinity bars, Darkness and Life, or Darkness and Light. Basic attacking will grant him one Dark affinity. Spellcasts grant one Light affinity. Now, one thing that I was also thinking about for this was having it be every spellcast after a basic attack will grant him Light affinity, and every basic attack after a spellcast will grant him a dark affinity. So it's not just, you have to actually think about your combos. It's not just, if you're wanting to go aggressive, stack up your dark affinity before you go in, and then go in, fight, while you're in the dark affinity form because it lasts 10 seconds. Use the dark affinity buffs, and do your thing. Because I don't want it to be like that, I want it to be, you have to decide, although to do it like that, like, cooldowns are all shared between his forms, like these cooldowns don't reset. So, to do it like that, I think I would have to make it so that the cooldowns do reset when he switches into darkness or light form from his base form, so that he wouldn't, completely lose all of his abilities just in getting into one of those forms, and then the abilities become useless. And Light Affinity has a similar problem where if the cooldowns aren't low enough, yeah, he should just completely reset. So, these will have to have their numbers lowered. His abilities will have to have their numbers lowered. I don't have any numbers right now. I didn't go into numbers when I was making him. So, I'm going to have this be abilities reset after shifting. And then basic attacks after abilities grant 1 dark affinity. Spellcasts after basic attacks grant 1 light ability. Or after ability casts. When he has 3 stacks of 1, he will enter either light or dark form for 10 seconds. Affinity will decay after 4 seconds out of combat. Q. Twilight Blades. Normal form, he throws a pair of blades in opposite directions. The dark blade deals damage to the first enemy hit, and that's the one that follows your cursor. So wherever your cursor is pointing, the dark blade will go in that direction, and the light blade, which heals you, will go in the opposite direction. So this means that you have to either, in most cases, you have to either make a choice of using your Q for damage or for healing in base form. However, you can also stand in between the enemy and someone that you're wanting to heal and do both at the same time, but that's not going to be anywhere near to as common. He's designed to be sort of like a fightery mage that is also sort of supporty. So basically he can play a support role if he builds for that, and he can play a fighter role if he builds for that. What I'm thinking is his dark form abilities scale with attack damage and health, and his light form abilities scale with ability power and health. So he can spec into one and be a pure support or a pure fighter, and then if he builds a little bit of health in the middle, he can get a little bit of bonus on the other one so that the other side isn't completely useless. Or he can spec into just straight up health and have both of them be decently useful, but not as useful as they would be if he spec'd for one. So, the light blade heals the first ally hit. I think that I should make it go through minions. It should heal the first allied champion hit. Allied champion hit. He can cast it on himself to heal himself without firing the dark blade. Light form. The heal becomes targeted and grants a speed buff, as well as applying a buff to the target that will proc after the target is hit by either enemy basic attacks or abilities 3 times to cause the heal to reapply. So it's a fairly small heal in light form, but the heal will trigger a second time after they've been hit 3 times. After they've taken 3 separate sources of damage from anything. Dark form. The damage is increased by 50% and it applies a 2-second slow, but it doesn't fire the heal. At the cost of not firing the heal. If the enemy hit is hit 3 times within the duration of the 2-second slow, it will turn into a snare for the rest of the duration. Only basic attacks and abilities will apply the hits. Only his basic attacks and abilities will stack for this. Math, I haven't done anything with math right now. W. Night Barrier. Normal form, he grants himself a moderate shield at the end of the duration of the shield if it hasn't been destroyed. I'm thinking it should last for 4 seconds. At the end of the duration of the shield, if it hasn't been destroyed, he pulls the nearest enemy champion within a very small range to him. Dark form, the pull damages the enemy, and light form, the shield can be cast on an ally to have its strength increased by 50%, but remove the pull. If self-cast, it will be increased by 25% and not remove the pull. So this pretty much makes you, light form self-casting it makes you more likely to get the pull, because you get 25% bonus to the shield, and Dark Form, the pull damages the enemy. E. Spinning Blades. Normal form. He spins his blades around him in a circle 3 times, dealing damage each time. The circle starts where the cursor is. At any point on the third spin, it will pull him to the first enemy champion hit. He is slowed by 30% while spinning. Dark Form, the slow is removed, so he's more likely to hit the enemy the third time, and Light Form, he can pull himself to allied champions as well, but will only spin once. So for Light Form, you can use it as a really easy, quick escape. You target it next to an allied champion, and then you pull yourself directly to that allied champion as soon as it starts spinning. It's not as fast as something like a Braum W or a Katarina E, but it's also not that slow, and it's pretty good. However, if you miss the targeting, if you, for example, put it a little bit too far to one side, it spins counterclockwise. So if you put it a bit too far to the left, it will run right past them without hitting them, and you could wind up pulling yourself to an enemy instead, which is a very bad thing for you. And then R, Archon of Light / Archon of Darkness. Can only be cast while one affinity is stacked up. He pulls his scythe off of his back, charging it with either dark or light energy, depending on which affinity is stacked up. In either form, he gains basic attack range and an attack speed buff. Swing passives trigger on cast as well. In dark form, he gains a 3-hit passive to swing his large scythe in a cone, dealing damage to all enemy champions hit and blocking enemy projectiles hit by the swing. In light form, he gains a 3-hit passive to swing his large scythe in a cone, healing all allies within the range and granting them all damage buffs. So, simply put, his ultimate is a buff for himself and potentially for his allies. He pulls his scythe off of his back. Now, I didn't draw him with his wings in this drawing. You might be able to see if you look closely enough. Faintly, I started to draw a wing over here on this side, but I never replicated it on that side, and I drew the large scythe on his back instead. So, when he goes into his ultimate form, he also grows these giant wings. Now, I would have liked to do some more arts. First off, a better main drawing of him. I've done some different designs for his sickles where they look different, where one of them looks like dark and one of them looks light, and it's really cool. I think I might show you guys that. And then I also wanted to do drawings for his scythe and drawings for him in in both of his ultimate forms. Let's just edit this scene to make my face cam bigger so that you guys can see the drawing. Sort of. It doesn't all fit, but you can see it. So this is the drawing in my sketchbook. I sort of started on the sickles. I didn't really do all that much with them, but I started on them. You can see this one is like a dark one, and this one over here is not as dark. It definitely needs a bit more lightiness to it, but, you know, it's a thing. So, thank you all for watching my first champion concept. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye. just edit scene and make my face smaller before I stop recording, just so that I don't have to hit preview stream and do it again.